they do study those philosophies there, but they do so studying them to understand why Marxism-Leninism is superior. We don't study Greek philosophy like that here. We study it as a way like you're going shopping and you choose your favorite Greek philosopher. The essential features of humanity. Some people state that humanity has common features with other organisms, and that at the same time, he is an attribute fundamentally different from that of the latter in the level of development, and explain the difference between the essential attributes of humanity and those of other organisms as a difference in the level of development. That's wrong. That's a wrong viewpoint. It's not a difference in development of evolution. Humanity is different because of a development in the social realm that differs from all other animals. That's not to say that they don't live in their own social realm, but they don't live in the human social realm, in our social being. And humanity itself cannot exist without the social being. Our entire consciousness exists because we exist in a society. If you took an individual human and isolated them from society, and they grew up outside of society, disconnected from all other humans, they would essentially not behave like a human. They would essentially have none of those social attributes, none of those social traits. Those are all things that you gain socially. And in fact, those social traits are so powerful that you can even use them to overcome biological urges and instinct, including very, very important life saving ones like hunger. For example, if revolutionaries are on a hunger strike. Yep, if one is to live in complete isolation, one must either be a beast or a god. We must not understand man's essential attributes as the development and perfection of the natural attributes, which organisms in general have. Of course, it can be said that when considered from a viewpoint of biological being, or could be argued, that humanity's body is superior to other organisms in certain areas of development. However, when they are considered from the viewpoint of a social being, humanity is fundamentally different from all other organisms, for the attributes peculiar to them. So it's not saying that we're better than other organisms, right? It's not saying, but it's saying that we have a different mode of existence. And that through this mode of existence, we should understand that it gives us an ability as a collective in order to alter society. You can't be a god not by yourself. How can you be a god, though? Juche did answer that. Who is the god? It is that which makes the man, right? Which is society, the masses. Exactly. So you always have to keep this in mind, that when we're talking about this social uniqueness, the social peculiarity of humanity, we're not saying it's better than the animals and that our lives are just so much more valuable per se, right? That's not really what it's saying. What it's saying is that humanity, through that ability, also can transform the world in massive ways. And the more conscious we become and the more united we become, the more effectively we can transform the world itself, which other animals don't do on the same scale in any type of way. And this is why it is on us to also make sure that we're not destroying the cradle of our own environment, and that we're preserving the diversity in species, right? It's important that we recognize that we have this ability, because ignoring that ability will then just have people say, well, climate change isn't real, right? We can just do all of these things and we don't have to worry about the ramifications. No, everything we do, our entire mode of existence is transforming the world. And therefore we should do so in a very conscious and planned way. that not only preserves our development as a species, but the development of this place that allows us to exist as a species, Earth. And we can only do that by sufficient diversity in species, sufficient diversity in food, specific diversity in all of these things have to be protected. And if you think that Juche doesn't allow for this and that Juche doesn't incorporate this, I invite you to look at DPRK today. Look at all the green technologies DPRK is engaged with. The preservation of nature, right? That DPRK does in so much of a better way than the US does, that the West does, despite their technological limitations from sanctions and embargoes. Yeah, there's a specific way of being appropriate to a bird or a monkey that is just as important to them as their species being is to us. Oh yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And that's and Juche is not denying that. See, I think that interpretation of Juche, Frank, in a sense comes from interpreting Juche through a bourgeois philosophical lens and thinking that Juche is seeing the world in this way that bourgeois philosophers do. When we know, like, simply because we know that Kim Jong-il and those communists aren't seeing the world that way, we know, for example, that's not what it's implying. Further, we know that's not what it's implying because it is starting from the premise of considering Marxism-Leninism to be correct. So you have to first understand everything that Marxism-Leninism is correct, and then Juche adds to that. Which is why I say, like, the people that say, oh, well, Juche is saying that only humanity has consciousness. No. It's saying that only humanity has humanity's consciousness, is what it's saying, right? Like, I'm sure there's an ant-social consciousness, okay? But that's not us. We are concerned about the human social consciousness and what we need to do to that human social consciousness in order to make revolution here, right? That's what it's talking about. It's not saying that no other beings have consciousness. It's just saying, in the definition of Juche, humanity has three attributes: independence, creativity, and consciousness. And that consciousness, as defined by Juche, is talking specifically about humanity's consciousness. So in that regard, in that definition, ants don't have consciousness. They have intelligence, they have blah, 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 but they're not part of human society, so they don't have what Juche defines as consciousness. But that doesn't mean that in DPRK there isn't other science, that there isn't a general definition of consciousness. Right? You have to understand that with philosophy, there is a specific meaning behind words, including in Marxism. Like metaphysics is a great example. Ant can master ant being just as we master human being. Yes. And for us though, the difference, Frank, is that if we mismanage mastering human being, if we mismanage our ability to collectively organize society, we can cause mass extinction. Not just of humanity, but of a great number of other species. And so we need to grapple with this quickly. We need to get humanity conscious of this quickly. And we need to fight against all of those false consciousnesses which deny that ability. Because that's what's allowing us to do exactly that right now. That's what's allowing the bourgeoisie to basically missteer human development to the realm where it's destroying itself, right? Yeah, it has to be scientific, and sometimes our science isn't fully developed. Exactly. Exactly. That's a beautiful way to put it. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that because a lot of people do, I think, misinterpret that, right? See, now again, the reason why I'm you see why we're saying the natural being or animal consciousness and human consciousness. The reason why we're separating them is because we're literally examining the way we humans develop, the way our society has developed. and trying to do that by looking at what ants do or what monkeys do or what is the one Jordan Peterson does or what lobsters do is not the way. That's bogus bourgeois philosophy. That's vulgar materialism, you see. I have a disagreement with the headline, with the hard line saying humans are the only social being. Humans are the only social being according to Juche, according to this definition of a social being. Yes, other animals live in complex arrangements, complex social groups with complex animal consciousness and intelligence. Yes, yes, of course they do. But they don't live in human society. They don't live a part of human social being. And when Juche is saying humanity is the only social being, it means the only social being that exists in the way we exist. In the way that we exist to transform the material things in the world to make them serve us better, like raw materials, etc., etc. The way that we can change whole environments essentially to better serve us, all of the go out into other planets and like set up scientific experiments on them and things like this. Like, yeah, we understand that absolutely there's other social lives, but they don't live the human social life, if that makes sense. They have their own way of socializing. That's the point. They don't have the human way of socializing. The human way of socializing, which is the domination of the world. Do you know what I'm saying? Other animals, they have their unique social lives. They lead very complex lives, very intelligent, very conscious of the world around them. However, what they don't do is transform the entire world and put like humanity at risk because they are developing their society in the wrong direction. Right? They adapt to the world around them in a way that is sustainable to their environment. Humanity is one of the only beings that has the possibility of developing in a way that like is harmful to the entire existence of our world. Maybe other animals have the possibility of developing like that, but currently no other being that we know exists with that ability. Right? And that's what we're getting down to understanding here. We're getting down to understanding why this is the case. Like why, and not only why is this the case, but also what is the implication of this for our relation with nature? If we have the ability to cause mass transformations and even mass extinctions, then what is our responsibility to nature, right? Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's what I mean by humans have a kind of different conscious world that we live in. Essentially. That's not to say animals aren't conscious and don't have social lives, but humans are socially developing and adjusting in relation to agriculture, husbandry, urban development, trade, industrialization, globalization. Other animals aren't fully conscious of those things and rely on us protecting them. Exactly. And maybe other animals discourse about the discourse, but we can't know that because, again, they exist in a different social realm than us. And their social realm isn't able to completely destroy ours in the way that our social realm can completely destroy the dolphins or it can completely destroy the fucking elephants, right? And so we need to understand our peculiar ability to transform the world. Does that make sense, Taka? So it's not saying that we're the only social being in existence, but rather we have a unique social existence that other animals don't have. It's the way of wording and the way of talking because they're not coming from a reactionary understanding of the world. They're coming from an understanding of Marxism-Leninism as their starting point when they're writing this, right? Whereas we have to combat all of those reactionary viewpoints. So that's why it's just put this way, as a matter of fact, as a way of being. Because they've already overcome those reactionary aspects of philosophy. right? It's like illegal, essentially. It's not illegal, but you get what I'm saying. It's not the like romanticizing vulgar materialism from fucking Greece is not like the way in DPRK, you know? So it's not. That's why. That's why it's very much not really explained in that way, because it's explained through their practical everyday lives. There are extinction events and population crises that happen in non human ecology, of course, but there's a difference of scale. Non human animals do build their own worlds, but our goal is to not have our self determination conflict with their self determination. Exactly. Exactly. And again, this is something that will require a contest between those social forces that don't yet understand that and won't grasp that for a long time, even. But yeah, does that make sense? Good lecture. I bet the native speaker reading the original Korean would find this much more intuitive. Yeah, and see Welps. That's the other thing too. We have to understand that translating this to English inherently has some problems with it. And then as well, you're dealing with people who have philosophical minds that come from, Greek and all kinds of reactionary philosophies, when they do study those philosophies there, but they do so studying them to understand why Marxism-Leninism is superior. We don't study Greek philosophy like that here. We study it as a way like you're going shopping and you choose your favorite Greek philosopher. Right? In DPRK, it's much more, we study Greek philosophy, but we do so to show you why Marxism-Leninism is superior and why it's the first scientific philosophy.